Welcome everyone to Next Practices Weekly. We're going to have a great conversation today around AI and HR in particular. ChatGPT, of course, has grabbed everyone's attention in recent weeks, but there's a lot more to it than just ChatGPT. So we'll be covering a lot of different angles. Great to see so many returning names and faces with us from past weeks. We do meet every week here at Next Practices Weekly, put on by I4CP. If you are new to this call series or new to I4CP, we are the Institute for Corporate Productivity. We're a human capital research firm that focuses on discovering the people practices that truly drive high performance. We define high performance by revenue growth, market share, profitability, and customer satisfaction. We always like to look for those practices that go beyond sort of standard best practices and are done more often by high-performing organizations versus low. That's what we tease out in our surveys and our studies, and that's what we provide to our member organizations. We are a member-driven community. You see here just a small sampling of the logos of some of our member companies. You see they span across all company sizes, different industries, from really large enterprises like Amazon, Accenture, and others, to maybe some that you're a little less familiar with. Special welcome to everyone on the call today that's from one of our member companies. Good to have you with us. If you're not with a member organization but would like to learn more, just reach out to me or really any person from I4CP that you can get a hold of our email address, and we'd be happy to have that conversation. My name is Tom Stone. I'm a senior research analyst here at I4CP, and I'm the regular co-host of this Next Practices Weekly call series. I'm calling in today from a hotel, not my normal digs in Rochester, New York, where I live. I'm down in Orlando, accompanying my wife at a conference, but hopefully the hotel internet will hold up, and we're going to have a great call today. I'm honored to be joined by Judy Albers, our Director of Research Enablement. Welcome, Judy.
Thanks, Tom.
Good to be with you today. Since ChatGPT came out, I know you've spent a lot of time researching it and playing with it, practicing with it, really educating a lot of us here at I4CP. So I know you're going to bring a lot to this conversation today. But before we get into that topic, I want to note again, these calls happen every Thursday at the same time, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. We'll have a special call coming up next week with Rob Croft and Karen Dillon, the two co-authors of a new book, The Microstress Effect. That's a very interesting topic. It's definitely one aspect of the burnout that we all have been experiencing increasingly over the past couple of years. And then you see a couple of the guests and topics that we'll have in subsequent weeks. So if you're not registered for all of these in the series, please make sure to get them on your calendar. We do record these calls, make them available in an archive for viewing later as well. A couple of other quick reminders. A lot of people know I4CP for our research and for the HR community that we provide, all of the networking and connection opportunities. What you might not know is that we also have an executive search practice focusing on high-level human capital roles. You see spanning the CHRO role, heads of DE&I, talent acquisition, L&D, total rewards, people analytics, really any of the heads of HR functions. If you're interested in learning more about this practice at I4CP, we obviously have a large network of contacts, and we do a great job helping you fill those high-level HR roles as needed. So just reach out to us at i4cp.com/executive search if you might have a need in that area. Also wanted to remind folks of our culture fitness study. That report has been out now for a few weeks. If you're not familiar with it, you can download a brief of that, of the findings, or you can check out the recording of the Next Practices Weekly call we had with Kevin Oakes and Catherine Brecken. I believe it was the February 16th call. Zeta will be putting that link to all of that information in the chat. Thanks again, Zeta, for always manning the chat and providing those follow-ups. It was a great call that we had with Kevin and Catherine. They walked through some of the key findings. So if you missed that one, again, the recording of that is available. And a couple of weeks ago, we had our annual conference out in Scottsdale, Arizona in late March. It was a great event, our biggest ever, over 500 people attending, plus several hundred online. Really a wonderful conference. We've already set the date for the conference next March 25th through the 28th, again at the Fairmont Princess in Scottsdale, Arizona. Folks are already registering, so we're looking forward to seeing all of you again next year. All right, let's dive into our topic for today. I just wanted to set some high-level context here. Several years ago, you might have seen this image from our study on automation and AI, or something like it. A lot of industry analysts and pundits were talking about the Industrial Revolution 4.0, or the fourth industrial revolution. It's a pretty standard way of describing sort of innovation cycles that we as humans have all gone through. Industry 1.0, mechanization and steam power. 2.0, marked by mass production, the assembly line, and so on. 3.0 was all about the computers and the internet into the 80s and 90s. And what they're saying when they say the fourth industrial revolution is they're really talking about advanced automation, robotics and robotic process automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, really taking that computer and internet revolution sort of to the next level. And it's different in kind enough that they're calling this Industry 4.0 or the fourth industrial revolution to really distinguish it from what we've all been living through, say, since the 70s. So let's kick things off. We've got several polls for you today. We'd love to get your feedback on some questions. So Zeta, if we could bring up the first poll, we're wondering, are you allowed to use ChatGPT? And we're going to dive into a lot more about what ChatGPT is and isn't in just a moment. But based on your understanding of it today, are you allowed to use this at your organization? And as the votes are coming in here, Judy, anything you want to note to sort of kick us off on this conversation around ChatGPT?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things we didn't put in the answers is what's ChatGPT, but sure. we will tell you about that. What I find is really interesting about this fourth industrial revolution is that it's been going on. It's the advance of artificial intelligence has been going on for quite a while. It's just that ChatGPT is the application that was the inflection point. It captured the world's attention. And so what we'll get into describing what it is, but I wonder how many of you who said not sure are just like, yeah, I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, I think the not sure was supposed to capture that as well. That might be one reason you're not sure, not knowing what ChatGPT is exactly, which is fair. It is as an app, it is new on the scene, even if the underlying technology is not. Interesting, almost 20% said yes, you are allowed to use it at your organization. Another 13% yes, but with some restrictions. And then another 13% saying yes, but you're pretty sure your organization is evaluating some restrictions on use.
Yeah, organizations are not talking about it as much as they should be.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the points we'll drive that home today. So great, thanks for that. Like I said, we'll have some additional polls as we go along. But Judy, why don't you sort of drive the conversation here a little bit about ChatGPT and beyond?
I will, absolutely. So we want to talk about why it is that ChatGPT is such a big deal. Why are people calling it the fourth industrial revolution? And most of the people that I talk to have heard about ChatGPT, but what they don't realize is that it is one application that is a form of artificial intelligence called generative AI. And so one of the things we want to do today is make sure that when you go to the dinner table tonight, you can articulate what ChatGPT is in the context of generative AI and why we should care. So the big thing about generative AI in the most non-technical language possible is that the generative, the G in ChatGPT, means that this system can actually generate brand new content. It can generate text, it can generate music, it can generate images. So any sort of digital content can be created with generative AI. And then a lot of people are really confused about whether it can think or not. And so one of the things we want to hit home is that it is generating new content, but based solely on the statistically most probable next bit of information, next word, next phrase, next note, next pixel. So ChatGPT, in the context of generative AI, is one application. It is an application that generates text. It's produced by OpenAI. And one of the biggest reasons why you should care about these things is that all of us in business work with, Microsoft's Office Suite or Google's Office Suite, and both companies are integrating generative AI. Microsoft is specifically working with the provider of ChatGPT, OpenAI. So Microsoft invested $10 billion to integrate ChatGPT with Office. And as Chad so clearly said in the chat, well, actually, if you don't know what an LLM is, it is a large language model. ChatGPT is trained on a large language model. Google's Bard is trained on a large language model. It's so the P in ChatGPT is pre-trained. These things get trained on a big model of data in order to predict the statistically most probable next thing. So Google has one, Microsoft and OpenAI have one. There are a lot of apps that use it. And very importantly for us, our HR tech providers are building out large language models within the sphere of HR. So there's language that is fit to purpose, that just is, what your HR service center knows about answering questions about your own policies, for example. So what we want to be thinking about is generative AI as a whole, and then uses in our personal life and in our business life. Now, a couple of people are like, I've started using it. I know that there are always people who haven't seen it in action. We thought it would be fun to show you a couple of things. I'm going to show you a couple of apps that I use. These apps actually use, I think both of them use OpenAI's pre-trained language model, but they integrate with other tools. So let me share. I'm going to share Chrome right now. So, and while I'm showing my personal use of ChatGPT, I would love to have you guys put in the chat how you are using it. If you are experimenting, how are you doing it? So here is YouTube, and I've been experimenting with some apps that use generative AI, and my favorite one I have found is called ChatGPT Summary. So I just added it as a Chrome extension for YouTube. When I click, this, by the way, is Michael Horn. He was at our conference 2 weeks ago, and I loved what Michael had to say about Dow's Total Rewards program. And so, but I got my expected ADHD diagnosis yesterday, and I know that I don't listen. I know that it is hard for me to pay attention when listening. So to watch a 7-minute video, I actually do a better job being able to have visual cues. So I think even from a neurodiversity perspective, we all have different, ways in which we think. And so anyway, look at what is happening here. I'm getting chapters on how Michael benchmarked. So this is chapterizing the entire video. And one of the really cool things that I can do with my app, we'll come back later when it's all done, and I'll show you. This app allows me to both get chapterized. It allows me to get a single paragraph. And since I already knew what Michael talked about, boy, was that paragraph accurate. It allows me to get an article. So I'm really into ChatGPT Summary. The other thing I'm really into, and my colleagues at I4CP were asking me about this yesterday, is I am into Read AI for meeting notes. So I met with Kyle, our colleague, yesterday. We talked about a web page that he's working on. And this is just the free version, but this is exactly what Kyle and I talked about. These are exactly the things that we wanted to to get fixed in this page that he's working on. These are Kyle's action items. It even chapterizes my video. And sure enough, we discussed both website issues and Tony Soprano impressions. So super.
Yeah, those are great examples, and I particularly like this one at YouTube with Michael Horn, the VP of Total Rewards at Dow. Like you said, he was one of the presenters at our conference and talking about his Total Rewards work, but he also shared a bit about how best HR can work with corporate boards at organizations. So it was great to have him there. But yeah, this summary tool that you're showing here on the right, this is integrating the ChatGPT sort of engine, if you will, into something else, right? Into the YouTube interface. And that's what we're likely going to be seeing from both Microsoft and Google and from a lot of HR applications, integrating whether it's ChatGPT or another large language model processor into the tools we already use. Many of you on the call have probably gone out to the OpenAI website. You've perhaps used ChatGPT just to play around, just to test it. And you can certainly go to that public interface and do that. And a lot of people are doing that so far. But this is where, for business purposes, at least the first baby steps will be really powerful when they integrate it into our HR applications and into our two main Office suites.
That is exactly right, Tom. Let's pop back to our slides and we'll just check the chat. Tom, if you want to check the chat, and I will keep rolling
along
here. But yeah, if anybody
we have a couple of polls that we were going to do next.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. So, what I showed you is ways that I am using ChatGPT. I'm using it as an individual. I'm actually using it, for work, but I'm also summarizing other YouTube videos that I am interested in. So this is really interesting. About 20% or so of you are actually using this probably similarly to the way I am. You found something that you like and you're incorporating into your life. If you are doing that, tell us in the chat how you're doing it. What apps are you using? We'll consolidate all of the input that we get from all of you into our summary. Some of you have been I've just been testing it out. About a third of you have been just testing it out. And then half of you haven't used it at all. And it'll be really interesting for you guys when you try it. Carrie is just saying, Carrie is my colleague. I too have been using it as my replacement for just Googling an open question. I have added ChatGPT extensions to my Google search. Oh, Kirsten, I used it to help me plan a wheelchair accessible holiday. Brilliant.
Yeah, very interesting use case. Love it.
Yeah. And Lex, it probably is possible to have been using it without knowing it. If you started to see text showing up when you did a search on something and it was original text as an answer, you were probably using some form of conversational AI without knowing it. But from what I have seen, usually you're like opting into it. You're asking to have this added to your Bing or to your Google. And Brett, we will put something in the meeting notes about how you add ChatGPT extensions to blank. If you don't know what I'm talking about when I say browser extensions or Chrome extensions, we'll put that in the meeting summary.
We had another poll here that we wanted to tee up, so Zeta will bring that third poll up. Are you paying for any generative powered apps, ChatGPT or otherwise? I'd love to get your thoughts on this. And again, if you have examples of ones that you're actually paying for using already, please do share in the chat.
While you guys are answering
here it comes.
Question. Oh, a number of you are asking to show, I might just do this at the end of our call, or I could even kind of sort of stay on after the official part is over and actually show people how I connect. definitely know Sheila too. And hi, Sheila. Nice to see you. I definitely do know some ChatGPT experts. And for members, we've already published a list of ChatGPT resources. We'll put some out there for this public audience as well. But there are some great experts out there. We don't endorse anybody. Oh, Grammarly, Lex, is a really good example. Grammarly has been using AI in language. I don't know that it's necessarily generating new text yet, but it might already be. So it's definitely using AI to analyze language. All right.
Not surprisingly here, Judy, the poll results, very, very low percentage. 3 said yes, only ChatGPT. Another 3% said something in addition or other than ChatGPT. So small minority so far. We expected that. I think if we were to do this in 6 months or a year's time, those numbers would be much higher.
Oh, I think so too. And what I think is really has been interesting to me is that I had a couple months of experimenting, and I work for a research firm. I experiment on this every single day. But the more I do, like Carrie, I say, oh my gosh, this is removing the tedious but essential tasks that I don't like doing anyway. And so I want to use it every day. And eventually I say, oh, this is worth it for me to actually pay for it. So I'm not surprised in the adoption curve that we got these results.
Right. No, exactly.
Okay.
All right, well, keep the sharing going in the chat, everyone, whether it's apps you're using, extensions you're using, use cases you're using. Let's pivot and talk about some of those use cases. What are the possibilities here with these technologies, Judy?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll tell you a few stories. The HR is already using generative AI in many ways. This has been going on for years. It's really just that this conversational AI has, ChatGPT kind of opened it up to everyone as it's just in the public awareness now. Everybody is writing about. Alicia, like a number of people, is using it to populate job descriptions because, yeah, think about it. It generates text. Amazing. Sarah is saying that the Notion app has started using AI and it's been great so far. Tell us more, Sarah, about exactly how it's using it, because I think the more use cases from all of you that we get, the better. I think one of my favorite use cases is, well, you think about anything that we do in HR, where we've got a lot of data, but that data exists as words. Okay, it's not numbers, it's not. Remember how we had always talk about, well, you have to ask a closed-ended question or you can't analyze the data. If your data is words and it is richer content, now you can analyze it. And so the way that I think about the real power app for generative AI is about the future of work. It's been all over LinkedIn how we've had all these layoffs in tech, right? We've and people are criticizing, well, I thought you guys were good at workforce planning. Well, workforce planning is a lot of data involving words. You have to know what skills people have, what skills are needed in other parts of your workforce. It's all data with words. And before generative AI, it was incredibly difficult to be able to match those things up, to be able to say, oh, I don't need to lay this person off because there are some potential matches over here, and I can do this at scale. So before that layoff memo goes out, or before we overhire for things that we don't need, we can look and see if there are people inside, instead of, folks trying to navigate the overwhelm of information that is out there. So I think that it's revolutionary for all of us, simply because it makes workforce planning based on understanding people's skills and knowledge possible in a way that it was never possible before. That's
Yeah, I think
really the killer app.
yeah, I like that use case. I like anything where you're needing to draft something for the first time. You mentioned someone in the chat also mentioned job descriptions, maybe outlining an upcoming presentation you need to give, or just getting going on say a business case for something that you need to advocate for more budget dollars within HR, just to get some standard information. Yes, it's true, as Michelle said in the chat, that ChatGPT can get some facts wrong. Interesting example I found early on playing with it. We put in asking for a professional bio of my wife, who is also in our industry, and it came back with 95% correct information, but mistakenly claimed she had a master's degree from the University of Georgia. She's never even attended the University of Georgia, so no idea where ChatGPT got that from. But I will note that simple Google searching also brings back misinformation or disinformation, things that aren't right. Michelle noted in her comment here that if you did a search on sort of a description of a company, it may not recognize that the company was going strong but just had a layoff. That's true. It's also true of Google searches. Oftentimes Google will promote or Bing will promote articles that are 6 months, a year, 2 years old. So yeah, your advice, Michelle, is right on point. Facts should be checked, confirmed with the independent sources.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where we have to go back to. No one is promising that generative AI is accurate. Once you understand that it is giving you what it is generating is the statistically most probable text or whatever phrase, maybe it's statistically probable that people like Tom's wife Cassie went to the University of Georgia. So you absolutely have to double check. I don't know. You absolutely have to double check.
Yeah, in that sense, it's similar to crowdsourcing information with humans, where that too, very likely correct in most instances. Same thing with Wikipedia, a crowdsourced guide that we've all come to value over the years, but none of us would say is 100% accurate all of the time, because again, the nature of crowdsourcing of data.
Yeah, totally. We'll get into, you guys are all doing a great job setting up what's coming later in terms of the perils. And so, Tom, give us a little bit more of what we already know about companies who have been using AI for longer than we all realize.
Yeah, and particularly in HR context. So I wanted to note that I4CP and our research team, we've been on top of automation and AI for a number of years. Our last main study was several years ago now in 2019. We partnered with John Boudreau, who's professor of research at University of Southern California, always a great thought leader and partner of ours. Conducted that study in early 2019. So about 4 years ago now, we had over 1,700 respondents to the survey. And a key finding was that high performance organizations, even back then, were nearly 2 times more likely to be experimenting with a broad range of uses of AI. And within the HR context, what sorts of uses are we talking about here? Well, leading the way then, and I would probably say still leading the way, is the talent acquisition function. You see here the percentages of high-performing organizations only, so not all companies, but only those high performers. What percentage of them were already using automation and AI for the following tasks within talent acquisition? Again, 4 years ago in 2019. So you see building job requisitions. We already spoke to that one. Helping to screen candidates. Using chatbots to assist candidates. Chatbots are a great example of conversational AI, again, that generate text and responses to prompts. Even things that are a little bit more, we could say, creative, like creating personas for candidates or for job roles in the organization. So nice list there of uses for talent acquisition. But TA certainly wasn't the only function that's been using AI. Learning and development, content recommendations, also adaptive learning, where you start an e-learning module, say, and then at some point you either can test out of certain things so you don't have to waste time in learning things you already know, or it takes you down a different journey to maybe help you reinforce some things that you may need. AI-driven tutoring, even chatbots for coaching and performance support. So some definite strong L&D uses that have been going on for several years. And even more than that, Judy was talking about workforce planning, so talent risk and mobility use cases, so matching internal candidates. We've done some great work with talent mobility with some of our member organizations, looking at how they're deploying internal talent marketplaces to really match up job role or gig or project opportunities to those people according to the skills they have in their skill profile. Those marketplaces have been a hot industry marketplace now for a while on the vendor side. And you see some of the other additional HR use areas for AI and automation more broadly. So sentiment analysis from those open-ended questions. Again, Judy, to your point about data that's in the form of words, not numbers.
Yeah.
So in the past, took a lot of manual work, and there's still something to be said for looking at things manually, for sure. But being able to more in an automated way go through thousands and thousands of open answer responses to the increased level of surveying and listening that we're doing to employees can be a real boon.
Well, it's like, to me, every time in my learning and development career, people would say, oh, we need to analyze the open-ended responses. All we would get out of it is a word cloud. And the word cloud would be the exact same words that were in the title of the meeting or the, like word cloud is not it. And to me, that is the difference between AI that we've had in the past and generative AI. Even with chatbots, what has been so difficult with chatbots before generative AI is that you had to have a script for the chatbot. If somebody asks this or something similar to it, you have to pre-program questions and answers into your chatbot, and constantly humans are managing the data. And the only answers that are given are pre-scripted answers. To be able to actually generate answers is so fundamentally different. And I'm seeing this in the chat as well. And Yolanda, you asked a really good question. So which applicant tracking systems have an AI component like ChatGPT embedded in them? A lot of them have an AI component, and like AI is what allows Netflix to recommend what you might like to watch, or a learning experience platform to recommend what content you might like next. That's AI, that's an algorithm, but conversational AI, there's only one so far. We're going to see a lot of them. But to my knowledge, as of April 13th, the only HR platform that has actually released something with conversational AI, like ChatGPT, is one called Beamery. Lots and lots of press releases about that, but I'd be super curious as to whether anybody on this call is using Beamery, and or are you aware of what your technology provider is planning?
Yeah, thanks for that. Distinction between sort of chatbot 1.0 perhaps and chatbot 2.0, where it becomes truly conversational. Sort of the difference between a fully scripted robot, if you will, and something like C-3PO from Star Wars, where he was clearly generating his own conversations back to Luke and the rest of the Star Wars gang. So.
Yeah, in fact, that reminds me of Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky is like the world's smartest linguist, and he's been dissing on conversational AI in the New York Times, and Tom posted an article, and I said, oh, I'm kind of getting a little tired of how grumpy Noam Chomsky is about AI. So I went to ChatGPT and I said, in the voice of Noam Chomsky, critique Noam Chomsky's views on AI. And it was like ChatGPT, it was very C-3PO, because it was exactly in the way he talks, and it cracked up everybody on our team.
Yeah, he certainly has never been an academic who has shied away from controversy. He's been around a long time. He's been a leader in the philosophy of language and linguistic space, to be sure, very well respected. But when he writes those op-eds, yeah, he definitely has a little bit of a Grandpa Simpson that comes across in some of his terms.
That's a good one.
So yeah, thanks everyone for participating in this fourth. I think this is the last poll we're going to have today, but specifically to the different HR functional areas, we wanted to know, where are you using AI tools in HR? And consider, again, all kinds of AI, like we said, maybe chatbot 1.0, as well as more generative AI. So thanks for voting here, and we'll share these results momentarily.
You know, while people are voting, I'm going to tell you about a couple of my friends in learning development. So my friend Laura, and I don't know, Laura, if you're on the call yet, but Laura is a learning producer who supports the technical college, the IT unit in her company. And she said, I don't know all of this technical content, but I have to write assessments that evaluate whether people know it. And the content changes constantly. She said, I am using ChatGPT to write assessment questions for me, show them to the subject matter experts so that they have a draft to react to. And I've been following a lot of people creating these mega prompts to get really, really good results out of ChatGPT for things that are very standard in instructional content. So it saves a lot of the busy work. My friend Trish has told me that in her training innovation unit, they have gotten the content development process time cut by 50%.
Wow.
Now so what did the humans, you still need the humans, but when I think about the 50% that was essential yet tedious, I would much rather have AI do it so that I have something to react to. That's why people love
that was my first thought when I started playing around with ChatGPT. I started my career in this industry in 1999. I was working for a training and development company that quickly became e-learning focused, and I was an instructional designer. And if I'd have had this kind of capability to get me going, to start an outline, because otherwise you're starting usually with two things. You're starting with a blank is an ID. If you don't have experience as an ID, here's how it starts. You start with a blank screen, and you start with a subject matter expert who really knows their stuff, but doesn't always have the skill to convey it nicely. Otherwise, they'd be the one developing the training on their own. And that's a very challenging way to start. Blank screen and a SME. So to have ChatGPT to give me even what question should I be asking that expert, give me an initial outline of what this training might need to look like. And then also at the tail end of the project, what have I missed? I mean, I've gone through the process, I've created this unique training. Are there a couple of bullet points or a couple of extra modules that maybe I missed along the way? So two great uses there for L&D.
Exactly. And we will call for any of you who answered in this poll. And can folks see the results now, Tom?
Yes, yeah, they are sharing out. Not surprisingly, TA came in number one at a little over 50%, L&D second. So this is very much mirroring the results we saw from our study in 2019. Performance management and onboarding sort of tied for third. Total rewards, compliance, not a whole lot of uses yet. Surveys coming in strong at 20%. General HR sort of self-service, chatbots and so on, 39%. So very good. Great to see.
Yeah, and some of you, so two things about the chat, because I've been watching it while Tom's been talking. First of all, some of you are asking about the perils, the dangers of generative AI, and that is our very next slide. So Andrea, we'll get to your question, but to Mary's question, and I think for all of us, if in this poll, you said that you're using it, especially help Mary out. If you're using it for performance management, share in the chat how you're using it, because this really does get us into the risks of knowing what is happening to the data, knowing how these generative AI tools work so that you can speak in an informed way about the risks. So let's pop over to the next slide. For me, in a non-technical business language, the 4 risks boil down to these. And these are, I think, all things that someone has already brought up in the chat. Number 1, large language models are being trained on text that already exists. It might be for GPT-3, the very first version of ChatGPT that came out. The GPT-3 is a large language model that was trained on everything on the internet well, everything, 175 billion data points from the internet to learn language, to learn the next statistically most probable word. But as it appears on the internet, we have so much systemic bias in the world and in what has been published already that any large language model that has been trained on a public body of knowledge is going to include those kinds of biases that already exist systemically. And the providers of these tools are really, really working to identify and address those and sort of retrain their models. But if a bias exists in the body of knowledge that is being trained, for AI, then that bias will exist in the answers that come out. Beamery, for example, and I think there's a couple of other HR tech providers, these folks are taking it incredibly seriously. So you can train a large language model on a smaller body of knowledge. You can test that large language model specifically for biases. So that is a really big and important question to ask of your HR tech provider when you're talking, or to ask of Microsoft, if your company is going to buy the Copilot that's coming out. Whenever your company is adopting something, what you need to ask is, what model was it trained on, and how have you accounted for biases? How have you retrained that model? So that's number one. Number two is humans ceding decisions to AI. So decisions like who to lay off based on AI's analysis of skills, decisions on which candidates make it through the process. This is a big one because recruiting, obviously so much data is about words in recruiting. And so recruiting is a little further ahead than some of the other areas. And so that's another thing, is that you need to be able to understand, how is your AI working? Are there chances that, anytime you say AI has decided, that's a red flag? You don't. You need to simply use it as data. Humans are the only ones with actual insight, because our brains are piecing things together. We're not just saying the statistically most probable thing when we're thinking.
The third one is interesting too, more convincing, disinformation and scams. Maybe being backed by people saying, well, ChatGPT says this, and again, sort of a crowdsourced approach to things. One of the folks in the chat noted, will it be possible to sort of cram the data used that ChatGPT and other programs use, cram it with sort of the perspective or the false information that you want it to then output to others? And I would say that's in theory possible, although given the amount of data that's going on, you would have to flood it with a huge amount of that particular angle to really start to skew the results. So I'd say yes, in theory, but we'll have to wait and see over time if people are actually successful in pulling that off.
Yeah, I think, when I think about a scenario where a bad faith actor could use a tool, like ChatGPT, I don't think that they would necessarily be able to skew the results that come from, say, OpenAI, like you said. But the fact that anyone can train up a large language model to answer anything that they want answered in a conversational way, it's that sort of trickery, the same way that bad actors have been using social media. They're actively trying to figure out how to scam people better. And they're actively figuring out how to sow chaos in the world. So it's more convincing when the answers are coming in conversational, generated text.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And to the extent that we've got disinformation, scams, et cetera, already out there, then they're a part of that sort of trained up data set. What about this fourth peril here?
Oh, this fourth one is good. And it gets to Kevin Martin's point about the story he saw on CNBC this morning about a CEO who is using generative AI to write the performance reviews of his 25 directs. I hope he is not using ChatGPT. to do that, because to someone else's point earlier, it was Andrea's. If you load original content into ChatGPT, if you load confidential content into ChatGPT. So let's talk about if this CEO was not aware of what he was putting out there into the public domain. Let's say the CEO had a rough draft and it was sort of insensitive, and it was just like, I don't know how to say this very well in my performance review, but here's my take on Tom. And so what he's doing is training the large language model on everything he just said about Tom. And so if somebody goes out, specifically searches on Tom Stone, it's very possible that just like it said Cassie went to the University of Georgia, it could somehow pull what that CEO has fed in about Tom's really bad dad jokes, and then, so yes, if you are using ChatGPT, I would never use a video of a private meeting, pop it onto YouTube to get that summary, because that's training the larger public model. You really have to understand, if you're not doing it for research, then you really have to understand what are the walls around the data set that's being trained by what I enter in.
And all of this, these four perils that we just summarized, Judy, this is why a lot of organizations have, at least initially, been banning the public use of ChatGPT. They may very well be investing in AI in lots of ways. They may be investing in bringing the large language model, within the four walls of their organization so they can use it internally. But the public version of ChatGPT, for a lot of organizations, they're restricting it. You see here's just some of the anecdotes where they found out employees were using it without permission of their boss, things like that. Interesting headlines here. And then more recently than some of these, there was an interesting one where an entire country, Italy, put at least an initial ban on ChatGPT, but they're now working with OpenAI, hoping to put some regulations on the use of it. I like their use of think of the children. Whenever there's something new that we're a little bit fearful of, need to gain some education on, we always invoke the safety of children to bring home the point.
Yeah, I'm going to call out Marissa's fabulous, hi Marissa, fabulous answer about AI tools at work guidelines at Turnitin, because you do need to have guidelines. So the half of you who are like, I don't even know if we're talking about this, you should be talking about it. So I really like what you've got here. Don't rely only on AI tools to make important decisions about people. Example, hiring, performance, and promotion. Beyond assessments, these decisions should be made by people leaders. That's a really good point about one of those perils and you see a lot in the press about, I got laid off because of an algorithm.
Right. Bad enough that we've got people doing layoffs by email. If it's an email and algorithm, that's a even worse combination. This was shared at our conference a couple of weeks ago from the main stage. That people are obviously fearful of AI, and this is some data from another third party that we found pretty interesting. 75% of managers believe their employees fear that the implementation of AI tools will lead to their eventual firing. So that's managers believing that their employees fear this. And if you wonder why that might be, well, the same managers were asked, and 66% said that they would gladly replace employees with AI tools if the work was comparable. 69% said that if it was financially beneficial to their business, they could replace employees with AI tools. And 68% said that AI tools will provide them an opportunity to lower salaries. So sort of three angles on the same point. From an economics perspective, if given the opportunity, they might very well reduce their labor costs through the use of these tools. So it's no wonder when employees hear some of this data that they might be then fearful. Our broader point at I4CP, our sort of perspective on this, is that a lot of that is not likely to happen, at least not to a very large extent. And we said this in our 2019 study in that report, and we still say it now. I think it's going to be used far more to inform decisions, like Robert is saying in the chat, I think it's going to be used far more to augment our capabilities. Yes, like any new technology innovation, this was true with the invention of automobiles. This was true with the Industrial Revolution. This was true with computers and the internet. There will be some folks in certain job roles where those roles are no longer needed, but far more often, it will be about automating individual tasks within a role to allow us humans to do more of what only humans can do best.
You know, Tom, it occurred to me, and I should have put this on a slide by itself, but I really, the more I look into what is going to happen in the world, not just within HR, that's just us looking at our own jobs and our own processes, but within the world of work, which HR is responsible for advising the rest of the company on. It is really not possible to have an informed point of view about the future of work anymore if it doesn't include AI.
Yeah, I mean, all this talk of the future of work for the past couple of years, understandably, has focused a lot on flexibility, flexibility of location in particular, but flexibility of time and other aspects. But if we were to go back 4 or 5 years, the conversation around future of work was on this. It wasn't on remote work. Obviously, the pandemic changed the tenor of some of that conversation and the direction and what we focused on. But I think a lot of folks, and again, ChatGPT was just sort of the inflection point for people's curiosity. I think we're pivoting back now to this sort of area of automation and AI. And I think you're exactly right. Anyone talking about the future of work, it needs to be just as much about the use of these technologies and where do they fit in, where should they fit in, as much as it is around location and hours of day, 4-day work weeks, and all of those kind of topics.
Really,
one thing I want to note too.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say what you've got here, the sub bullet, you can't compete against people who have RPA, robotic process automation tools, and skills to use them. I've heard other people talk about this with regard to various roles, like, will these tools replace any job role? Pick one, like lawyers. And the response that I think is really smart, that I've heard from a lot of thought leaders out there, is that it's not going to replace lawyers. Lawyers who use AI are going to replace the lawyers who don't use AI. And I think that's the right way to think about it for a lot of different job roles. So whether it's an HR professional, an instructional designer, as I mentioned earlier, IDs that use AI will replace IDs that don't use AI. So this is why we're urging everyone, start testing with this now in your personal life, test with it at work if you can, to the extent you can. Get up to speed on this, because that's going to be the dynamic in the labor force going forward.
I think, and that's exactly the point. So while we go on to the next slide, Robert made that point in the chat about all these managers who are talking about whether they would replace employees. If you're a knowledge worker, it's your job. It's your job that will change more significantly. And so, yeah, it's you really have to think about, not am I going to get replaced by the computers, but when somebody knows how to use these tools, I know personally, I can do my job at least a third faster the moment Microsoft releases Copilot. I already know it from all the work that I've been doing with public work with ChatGPT. So what are some other actionable things that you can do? How to move forward responsibly? Okay, the first thing is that if you are not already best friends with IT, you need to have friends in IT. You need to be really partnering. There are in fact leading edge HR departments who are completely rethinking their teams, not just HR roles and how they can be done differently, but forming multidisciplinary teams who include HR subject matter experts, technical subject matter experts. And so there are more technicians working directly for HR now, as opposed to we've got a silo in HR and we've got a silo in IT. So all of this work that we've seen toward human-centered design, this generative AI is just going to accelerate the need for all of us to think far more systemically about the entire employee experience than we have in the past.
Yeah, I
Go ahead.
absolutely couldn't agree more on that front. Like you said, if you're not already close with your IT department, now is absolutely the time. We've been talking about some of the ideas for using these technologies in HR, so keep that ideating going. Hopefully this call has helped spark that interest in you. Using generative AI in your personal life, again, it's a great way to test and just get up to speed for yourself. Judy, I'd like to hear more about this new word that I didn't exist in my vernacular until a few months ago, prompt craft.
I know it's my #1 skill to learn in 2023. And if you liked words, it is the English majors and the history majors and the linguists who are actually the AI. They are the ones who are becoming the best AI engineers. And so there is a whole field now called prompt engineering. There is a craft called prompt craft. We all need to get good at it. The same way that I needed to understand what a spreadsheet is, when and now I'm dating myself, but yes, you need to know certain skills, and prompt crafting is going to be one of them. Just like we understand now how to search Google better than we used to, you sort of know how to enter a search term. Same thing with prompt craft, just Google it. You'll prompt craft 101, and they're just knowing that word. It is about, how do I ask artificial intelligence to give me better results?
Yeah, that's a good way of describing it. And there's our entire
Did we lose Tom?
Yes, we've lost Tom.
I will wrap up. Poor guy. He did a pretty darn good job from that hotel room.
He sure did.
Today. So yeah, we're pretty much at the top of the hour here. And so Zeta, I know that there are typically some things we say at the end of Next Practices Weekly. So off you go. And I promise to look at everything you guys said in the chat and just, start to post on LinkedIn, on our website, et cetera, in our meeting notes, just some, some answers to questions that haven't already been answered today.
Yes, thank you, everyone. We look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same place. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, Judy. This was great.
Bye, folks.
Hi, Judy.
Yeah.
This is Sheila. You had mentioned, I sent you my email. I was looking up for some ChatGPT context to write an online course. And also you mentioned that there are a bunch of materials you put together. We are part of the consortium, so I would be grateful if you could send that to me.
In fact, I'm happy to do that. So I do see, and I did offer to stay online and answer more questions. So
unfortunately, I have to run to another meeting.
Okay.
But would you share them? Can I get your email so I can communicate?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just judy.albers@i4cp.com. And Sheila, I will find you and I'll just send you that information. But I'd
be very grateful. There's a time sensitivity about it, so I'd be very grateful. I'm going to run now because my other meeting is already waiting. So really appreciate and enjoyed the session. Thank you.
No problem. Any of the rest of you that are still on the call, I'm putting that link to our member information in the chat. And yeah, and I'm happy to, Zeta, I don't know if you stop recording at this point or we just edit the rest of this out of the podcast version. But if you are not a member, Alicia, we do post a public sort of summary of the meeting on our webpage, and I'll be sure to put some good tidbits in there as well.
Yes, that is correct. All right, thank you, everyone. All right, thank you, Judy.
Sure. Bye,
Bye-bye.
folks.